Hi guys, welcome back to another video. I am on location at a beautiful little spot near a walking trail. If you hear any cracking, I got a little bit of a bushfire, a campfire on my side, and you might be able to see some of the smoke here and there. What's the date today? Oh, it's October 1st. Friday, October the 1st, and I'm out in the Algonquin region of Ontario, Ottawa Valley, and having a nice quiet afternoon. I was thinking of doing this for a while, having a nice little afternoon alone out in the woods, and a lot of people dream of being able to do stuff like this, and for as much as it's difficult to live in the country and away from a lot of things, a lot of amenities, I have $1 million view. I'm right on the side of a lake here. I think you might be able to see some of it in the background. And there's a busy fish or something in the water. I'm guessing it's a bass. I haven't been able to see what's splashing around, so I'm guessing it's a fish. It's possible it's something else, like a martin or a muskrat or something, but the fact that I haven't seen it at all makes me think it's a fish. I suppose I could have brought my fishing rod, but that's not what I'm here for today. So today I want to talk about a book I just finished. I wasn't planning on reading it anytime soon, but I sort of got a sudden flash of inspiration. Someone has been asking me for the last year or so if I would contribute to their journal. Anyway, and I just haven't been researching in that area for a long time, so I didn't take him up on the offer. I didn't think I had anything to contribute, and then I got a sudden flash of inspiration. So that's why I read this book. So the title of the journal paper that I'm going to write on is The Meaning of Early Christianity in Leo Tolstoy and Michael O'Brien. Now, most of you know who Leo Tolstoy is. Michael O'Brien is a Canadian author. He's very well known in Catholic circles. He's a very faithful Catholic man, and he lives actually in my area. I know him decently well. I've read a few of his books. I've read Voyage to Alpha Centauri over Christmas time. It was amazing. I'm so sorry that I haven't reviewed it here. Or have I? No, I don't think I have. Voyage to Alpha Centauri is an amazing book. And I've read his Journal of the Plague Year. Or is that the original title of Defoe's work? Plague Journal, I think, is Michael O'Brien's book. And then finally, yesterday I finished his book, Theophilus. So Theophilus is, of course, for Christians, they'd recognize the name Theophilus as the one to whom St. Luke addresses his gospel and the Acts of the Apostles. So it's generally thought by scholars that Theophilus is not an actual person, but a sort of a representation of believers. Theophilus, for even those who have slight contact with Greek, would know that philo means love, and that's where we get our word philosophy from. And theos, means God, so lover of God. See some of the ashes flowing this way now. That's okay. So Luke, in the very first verses of his gospel, addresses his work to Theophilus, and you can see that it looks like it's snowing now. The wind shifted a bit, and my fire's going down to coals now. But anyway, and also the Acts of the Apostles. He says, he mentions again, in my first book I said blah blah blah, and then he begins the Acts of the Apostles. So Michael O'Brien has chosen to make Theophilus into an actual person. And this is the story of Theophilus. It's more of the autobiography of Theophilus. It's written. There's different forms within the book. So it starts off as letters, and then it becomes his journal. Theophilus starts interviewing the early followers of Christ, of Jesus, and then the very end is a concluding letter written to Luke by one of the believers after Theophilus has died. So in standard Michael O'Brien fashion, we follow the journey of someone who's not a believer. Okay, and this is the same thing he did in Voyage to Alpha Centauri. Yeah, I brought some coffee with me. I'm not a savage. Anyway, so we follow, and we're invited along with, by Michael O'Brien to take Theophilus' journey in a way. And Theophilus is the uncle of St. Luke, the apostle. They call him Lucas in the book, and all the names are slightly, Hellenized, and some of the Jewish words are Hebraized. Anyway, but it's enough to figure out who's who, according to the regular English spelling. So Theophilus is his uncle, but also becomes basically his adopted father because his Luke's parents die early on through a plague, actually. I like that choice that O'Brien made there, and some of his depictions of the plague that sweeps through. Where are they at the time? Are they in Crete? No, they're in Thessalonica, I think. It's really a powerful section where he's describing the effects of the plague and people's reaction to it. It reminds me of Boccaccio, and also that other book I wanted to reread on the Black Plague, Black Death. Anyway, so the book is very good, very good. Now it sounds like I'm saying that cautiously. It has weaker sections and it has beautiful, very strong sections. I would say in a sense it's uneven, but that's completely completely left up to the interpretation of the reader, because in a way readers will be very split on this book. I assume most readers, and it's pretty easy to figure out who O'Brien's writing for. He's writing for Catholic believers, and he's writing for people who don't have a whole lot of historical background. So he dumbs down a lot of stuff, which is, obviously necessary. Ostensibly, it's written for, people who are, I suppose, on the considering Christian belief, but I think rather it's probably truer to say that it's for strengthening believers, okay? People who are already committed to the Catholic faith. And I say Catholic, I don't say Christian, I say Catholic. It's very Catholic, and let me tell you why it's very Catholic. It's very Catholic for a number of reasons, and two, there's the smoke. Probably creates atmosphere for you here. It's Catholic for two reasons. Number one, the prominence of Jesus' mother, Mary. We have to remember, Luke's is the gospel that focuses on Mary the most. And the tradition has it that St. Luke actually was the first. He's also the patron saint of painters, of artists, because tradition says that he was the first to paint a picture of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and he had a very close relationship in that sense with her. So the prominence of Mary, I think I'm going to say it's too strong, I think it's too strong from a historical perspective, but I certainly understand what O'Brien's after here. It's too strong because, frankly, anyone who knows the Gospels well, it's too much from what we see in the Gospels, the place of the Blessed Virgin. And secondly, I find that the presence of the Eucharist is too strong as well. Like, it's almost like they had a fully developed Mass. Now that's a bit unfair. It's not completely unfair, but it's a bit unfair. If you know the Acts of the Apostles, the beliefs of the people, of the faithful, were very rudimentary in a sense. Like if you compare it with Catholic doctrine as it developed, say, by the 4th, 5th, 6th centuries. He even has the presence of incense at one point, and I remember reading that incense didn't come into Christian worship until quite a bit later, like the 5th century maybe. But again, Jews used incense in their worship, so there's an argument to be made there that Christians did too. But that's the one thing you'll see in the Acts of the Apostles. I taught the book a number of years in college, so I know it quite well. And that's the one characteristic, that's one characteristic that you'll find in the Acts of the Apostles, is that it's very unclear what the people are very unclear about what their religion's supposed to look like. And if you follow sort of modern emphases, Christianity is now thought by a lot of scholars to have been a very apocalyptic religion. And I don't necessarily agree with that 100%, but I definitely think that it's a very prominent thing, and Michael O'Brien does and does not reflect that dimension. So what do I mean by that? I mean that the early Christians thought the end of the world was basically about to happen, and Christians were kind of surprised when it didn't. And this got certainly mixed up into their interpretation of what the Romans did to Jerusalem in about the year 70, when they destroyed Jerusalem and destroyed the temple because of the rebelliousness of the Jews politically. Now that's one thing that I'm focusing on with this paper I'm writing, is in my comparison of Michael O'Brien and Tolstoy, one thing I'm focusing on is what was the atmosphere, in a sense, like what does Michael O'Brien get out of early Christianity? What does it mean to him? My answer to that is a little more tentative. I've got to do a lot of thinking through, and the best place to think is while you're writing, I find. I know Tolstoy much better. I know his mind much better, believe it or not. A man who died 100 years ago and was never within thousands of kilometers of me, or lived in my lifetime, versus a man who lives down the street from me. I know Tolstoy's mind better than the mind of the man who lives down the street from me in that regard. So what does early Christianity mean to these writers? Why write about it at all? So that's the question I'm looking at when I write my paper for this academic journal. So what else about the book? So what does Christianity mean to him? Michael O'Brien is very, it's funny to say that he gets the eschatology, or the, he underemphasizes the eschatology, because Michael O'Brien is renowned for his focus on eschatology. But it's so funny that my feeling is that whereas he overplays it in the modern context, say with Father Elijah, and probably his most famous book is Father Elijah, and Plague Journal and different things, I actually feel like he underemphasizes it in terms of the first century. Now, so Michael O'Brien, he internalizes the eschaton in this sense. So what the hell does that mean? He does something, I think, that's sort of invalid in a way. Well, valid in the long haul, in the Catholic 21st century way, but invalid, I think, historically, in the sense that the first Christians didn't think that the eschaton, the end of the world, the new heaven and new earth, was a spiritual phenomenon. They thought it was a historical phenomenon. It was represented and sometimes conflated with the destruction of the temple and of Jerusalem. But the first Christians, almost to a man, believed that Jesus was coming back in their lifetime. And Theophilus and Luke flirt with that idea, but I think they're too comfortable with the internalization of it, so that they've already accepted that the eschaton comes when you die. I mean, that's a modern idea. I'm not saying that nobody in the past believed it, nobody in the early church believed it, but I'm just saying that that wasn't the primary or operating idea. They had to adjust their thinking to the fact that the apostles are all dead now. What's up? And we see that in the gospel in several places. They have to adjust their thinking. Now, I'll get a bit more into that, of course, in the paper I'm writing, but in terms of the book, it's beautiful, and it has moments of brilliance, moments that are very moving, spiritually provocative, intellectually provocative. So I think for most readers, you'd find a lot of food for thought. And I'm trying to read it not with the eyes of someone who's studied a great deal of early Christianity, but sort of trying to think more of what the intended readers, what they would make of it. So, I mean, I was spiritually moved by it, and I don't, you know me, I'm not a religious guy. Sorry, spider walking on me. I'm not a religious guy anymore, but I found it very moving. But to be honest, I was more moved by Voyage to Alpha Centauri. Weird, I know. But I guess I recommend the book to people. Don't read it if you're looking for true historical insight. But I think one of the great things in Catholic spirituality, there's something called the Ignatian Method. And the Ignatian Method of prayer is basically to put yourself in the historical situation of the text you're reading. So a text from the gospel, you're supposed to kind of really think about it. Like, say if it's the wedding at Cana, that passage, you're supposed to try and put yourself in that situation, and that's your prayer, is to visualize and to reach out and to connect with God through that visualization. So I really enjoyed that. I found that was very much Michael O'Brien's approach, and that's the best part of the book. Is basically he interviews early Christianities. He himself is trying to figure out the truth of this stuff. He's trying to make sense of his son's new religion that he's kind of suspicious of. He's a bit leery of. So he interviews Christians. He interviews early Christians. And you find that several of these, not every single one, but several of these are people that are in the gospel, so in the miracles, people that Jesus actually cured, or, people that were around when there was a miracle, or heard him preach, or this or that. And that was super interesting. And it was also super interesting to be plunked down in Nazareth, the village in which Jesus grew up. I found that really cool. Now, that's not to say that Michael O'Brien he definitely knows the Holy Land. I don't know for a fact that he's ever been there, but it's pretty obvious that he's been there. He's never told me that, or I've never asked him. No one's ever told me. but it's pretty obvious that he knows what he's talking about. It's pretty obvious that he's been there. But that being said, other than sort of peripheral sort of or schematic descriptions of the geography, he doesn't immerse you in the scene like, for instance, a Tolstoy would describe the room you're in, the feeling, the this, the that, describe all the people. It's not very descriptive. It's much more focused on dialogue and on ideas than on the description per se. So I recommend it. Not the best book I've read all year, and not the worst, definitely not the worst. Definitely well worth it. And one thing that I thought as I was reading it was, this would be both a good and a bad book to assign a class in early Christianity, for instance. Like, it'd be good in this, it's bad in the sense that it gets, I would say it gets some of the history wrong or misshapes it or distorts it a bit, but good in the sense that, well, wouldn't that be a great exercise to say, well, what's the truth of this passage? What's not the truth of this passage? Anyway, I think you know what I mean in that case. But anyway, I'm really happy to have read it, and it's a very, very fine book, and you should check it out sometime. But again, it's up to you. Like, do you want to learn about early Christianity? Whatever. I preferred Voyage to Alpha Centauri, but it was a wonderful book anyway. So I'm just going to enjoy the rest of my time here. I don't think I'm going to make another video while I'm here, but stranger things have happened. So thanks everybody so much for listening. Sorry it's a bit of a longer video, 22 minutes so far. I think people like shorter videos, like 10 or 15 minutes max. But hey, what can you do? I'm still learning the ropes here. Thanks guys. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me, and those who communicate with me via Twitter, Facebook, or whatever. And please like and support and share. Thanks guys. I hope everybody has a great day.